We are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website, dkpco.com.au, or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Buying your electricity from the big energy companies is now the most expensive way to power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years. But not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
In the studio and with a high-stakes Olympic football match to look forward to. It's all looking up here, and we hope that our good friend up in Sydney, things will be looking up for you too very soon. Nick Stoll, welcome to Twilight Football.
It's great to be here live from my bedroom. Such is the way that we have to broadcast these days. Apologies if you are watching this on the Twitch stream and you can see that my bed isn't made. But, you know, it's been a busy day up here in Sydney. But it's great to be here. I'm super excited to talk about the Olyroos. I'm super excited to talk about the Matildas. Super excited to talk even about Ange tomorrow. Obviously, Celtic, huge game in the morning against Michelin in the Champions League qualifier. So a lot going on. So good to speak to you, Josh, and good to speak to you listeners of FNR.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to that Ange game. It's going to be a tough turnaround from a 9 p.m. kickoff tonight to, what time is it tomorrow morning?
3:45 a.m.
Oh, that was worse than I even thought it was. Oh,
but you can get up and watch it, a little bit later if you don't check the score and don't check social media on Stan Sport.
Yeah, it was my first experience with Stan Sport, tuning in for the first league. It was a pretty stable platform. I was impressed. I don't know, whether the load testing has been done a la Optus for the World Cup, but I'm sure plenty of people are going to be interested in Ange. I was super impressed with his first outing as Celtic manager. And I think some of the fans completely flipped their opinions on him in the space of 45 minutes.
Man, they dominated. I think the XG was like 2.8 or something to 0.3. So, listen, it's very tough for him because he obviously, it really needs to get a result. But obviously, he's trying to build a squad and trying to change their football. And, their squad is quite weak, much weaker than it's been in the past. If he gets knocked out tomorrow, I don't think the fans will be too much on his back, but it'll be a huge blow to his plans because obviously the financial ramifications of not qualifying for the Champions League group stage are huge. So, tough one for Ange, huge one for Ange. We're obviously all hoping, except for maybe AY Mobile's family and big fans of the AY Mobile, are probably hoping that he goes through. But yeah, I don't know. It is worth getting up for, I think, whether that's at 3:45 or a little bit later and you just don't check the score on social media.
Well, we're going to be watching along on the Olyroos game tonight. It was a big hit last time with our live watch along. It's sort of a little bit chaotic, a little bit off the beaten path. I think you get a little insight into what the F&I personalities are really like when the heat is on in those big match moments, and I think people enjoyed it. I
definitely enjoyed participating in it, even though at multiple times I, accosted people on the stream for talking about things like water polo and AC Milan and all the things. I did want us to focus a little bit more on the game, but I think we will tonight be a bit more focused on the game. It's a bit easier to focus on the game when actually we have like a good chance of winning it, maybe. Didn't seem like we had a great chance against Spain.
Yeah, let's talk about that Spain match, because it seemed as if there was a sort of slowly encircling python around the Socceroos, or the Olyroos, I should say, their neck in that game. It seemed like a sense of inevitability that eventually Spain would score, eventually the dam would break, eventually the Olyroos would no longer be able to defend the edge of their own 6-yard box. What did you make of Graham Arnold's approach to that one against, let's be honest, a very talented and well-balanced side that Spain have brought to this Olympics?
Yeah, when you be cold about it, Spain is a much better team. We all know that. But I guess I didn't mind the approach initially. I guess I was quite happy with it up until the 60th minute. Anyone kind of watching this, the watch along the stream would have seen my kind of only criticism was our lack of threat off set pieces. I think obviously if you are quite a defensive team and you're going to get limited opportunities, to attack, one of the things that you need to be really good at is set pieces, especially when you have someone like Harry Sutar, who is such a weapon. We didn't make use of that weapon, I thought, on our set pieces. So I was a bit frustrated with that, but otherwise I was very happy up until 60 minutes. Then the changes came, and I just actually thought the substitutions actually brought on more pressure than they relieved. And I think actually in that time you wanted to relieve pressure and bring on an attacking option and give that threat to help the team, not have to defend so often. So I actually think, that's my kind of criticism of the team and Arnie was the substitutions weren't great. It actually invited more pressure onto us. But, overall, pretty happy with the performance of most players. I thought there was a lot of great effort. And, yeah, a 1-0 loss wasn't the worst thing in the world because of the goal difference factor. And that could help us going forward.
Talking of set pieces, I think our best deliveries came very, very late on in the contest when Nick D'Agostino came on to hurl some long throws into the area. Is that an avenue that Australia should look to exploit earlier in the contest than they went for against Spain?
I spoke to James Holland, obviously the soccer who plays in Austria, about this because he became the long throw specialist for his team, LASK in Austria, and they had huge success with it, like huge. And they actually went on a Europa League run, nearly won the league. But basically, what he said the reason they do it is, and they had like almost a specific set piece coach come in, and we were talking about the fact that Liverpool had been reported that they had a throwing coach. The thing that you get from a long throw into the box is not in itself, it's particularly dangerous. It's just very hard to clear. If you think about a corner that comes in whipped in with a lot of pace, as soon as you get your head to it, it goes flying outside the box, probably 30, 40 metres away. A long throw comes in. It's quite hard to get the necessarily kind of for a defender to clear the ball. So it might not necessarily be about the first ball comes in, but the defender might head it away, but they only might head it away 5 metres away because of the speed that it's coming in. It gives you much more opportunities on that second ball. I don't think that you should totally rely your whole strategy a la Stoke City used to do. This is the way that we're going to score our goals. But it is a threat. It's another threat. I always am a big believer of the more threats you have going forward, the better you're going to be. So if you are dangerous on set pieces, that's great. If you're dangerous at opening a team up or getting in behind or speed or whatever, the more threats you have, the more harder you are to contain. So in that realm, I would like to actually see that from D'Agostino. I don't mind the long throws, but I guess you just want to see also a lot better open play performance in open play.
The thing about the long throw also is that it's towards the goal, or it can be. Whereas a corner, by its very nature, you need quite a skilled practitioner to get it to curve towards the net. Whereas with the form and momentum of the long throw, it does make it a bit more difficult for goalkeepers, I think. And I don't know if Nick D'Agostino should start this game based purely on that attribute, but it's certainly something to consider. Although Egypt does have one of the largest defenders I've ever set eyes on in Higazi, as playing as one of their overage players in the backline. So perhaps maybe there are different avenues to exploit. The main challenge here is the suspensions. Riley McGree, Nathaniel Atkinson, Mitch Duke, they're all out. Who do you see coming in for those players? Who should fill those roles?
So I guess it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how Arnie wants to play. Obviously, what Jude gives you is he's that more target man, solid number 9. If you're looking for a direct replacement to that, then probably D'Agostino is your best option. Now, maybe he looks at it and says, well, do we necessarily want to play like that? Could we play with a more fluid front three? Could you have Arzani, Tilio, Piraeus also? That could be the option. As for who comes in for Nathaniel Atkinson, then you have, there's talk of Piraeus even playing it right back. Tommy Deng could shift across. Don't really like either of those options. And this is where you really have to kind of your coaching capabilities really come to the fore, because you have to. Both options have their weaknesses. Both options. If you pull Tommy Deng away from that centre back position, does that make us weaker in that part of the field? Because his combination with Sutar has been fantastic, I thought. So Nathaniel Atkinson, if you put Piraeus there, he's not that experienced at right back. He's played there once or twice, I believe, in his time. That could be an issue as well. So it's a tough one. And the third suspension is, of course, McGree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so McGree's gone.
So then you're probably looking at maybe Caleb Watts coming in for him, or maybe, I guess, could be Devlin. But I don't know. I would think Caleb Watts would come in based on the fact that he's been subbed in both games this time.
Yeah, it's a question of whether they're like-for-like changes, whether you go a little bit more aggressive or whether you even drop another player behind the ball, because Arnie did make that sub during the Spain game to try and hold on to the point, to go to 5 at the back. That could see Piraeus play in a slightly more natural position as a wing-back, which he has occupied quite a few times for Western United. Maybe not his best position, but he's certainly more comfortable than on the right side of a 4. So, Look, I don't particularly like the idea of going to a 3 based on how the Spain game went, but I guess this is a different context against Egypt.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we looked at our best against Argentina when both Atkinson and Josh King were getting forward and really bombing on. Now, are they able? Obviously, Atkinson's not going to be there. So do you put Piraeus in, who can really bomb on? We know that. And put King as well. I mean, I don't mind the back 3. Then it's a big question about what your midfield composition is going to be. And then I don't mind, Arzani and Tilio up front. I don't necessarily think we need a target man, especially if there is such a, like you say, such a big defender that Egypt has. How effective is a target physical presence going to be if they can deal with that so easily? So I'm very interested to see what he goes with. It's not an easy decision for Arnie, but there are solutions there.
Looks as if a draw is enough to get us through, which was the same equation that the Matildas faced in their match against the USA. The difference being, of course, that Egypt needs a win if they're to have any hope. So I think we'll see a little bit more of a competitive outing than the two sides who really settled last night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it was a very boring last 20 minutes of that game. But, Egypt will come at us. Egypt will attack. And hopefully maybe that will open more space up on the break. And maybe that's even another reason to play really quick players up front. But, yeah, I don't know. I think if we play for a draw, we will lose. And if we play for a win, we might draw. So I think it's better. I mean, I'm not saying we won't win. I think we can win as well. I just think we're a better chance of getting a point if we play for 3 rather than we're playing for 1. I just don't think we'll be able to hold out for 90 minutes. That being said, Egypt's attack, not particularly great.
No, and the more I look at this table, the more I think a 1-0 loss to Spain, while it might not have been particularly pretty, was actually quite a good result, because a draw sees us through. I mean, if Argentina beats Spain tonight and we draw, Spain's out.
Yeah, I would be stunned if that Argentina team beats Spain.
Yeah,
that Argentina team was awful. So, and I think Spain, obviously, they still need to win, so they'll play a pretty full-strength squad. Argentina, I don't even think they were as defensively solid as we were. They were really pretty awful to watch. So I think Spain will beat Argentina 1 or 2-0, and then it'll be up to us, obviously, probably to get the draw or the win. But it'll be a very interesting game.
One of the players I'm looking forward to seeing in the Egypt lineup, and there aren't too many of them, to be honest, but they've been creditable in their defensive efforts so far this tournament. They do have one X-factor player, and that is Ramadan Sobhi. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Stolich, but he loves a step over, and he never does what the coach says. He just does whatever the hell he wants. He's a mercurial talent.
Those are the players I love. I love a step over, and I love ignoring the coach too. Don't worry about it. Just be free, Adele Tarat vibes. That's how it's got to be. So no, that's very exciting. And Roman Sobi, he plays obviously on the left, so that could be a really tough matchup for someone like Perez. So maybe you play Deng there at right back, and then maybe you kind of filter it more, your attack down the left side and get Joel King forward.
That could be it. I think Tommy Deng is the stay-at-home marker on Sobi, and then maybe Dylan Perez has a shout for playing up front in this game instead.
Yeah.
I mean, he is sometimes a victim of his own versatility, but he does stretch defences with the pace that he's got and gives the midfield a little bit more space to play.
He scored a lot of goals in a very average Western United team last season. So I'm impressed with him. So, yeah, I quite like that solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is do or die for the Oli Roos tonight, but I have to say, considering the Argentina side that indeed beat this Egypt team, the Oli Roos should probably be doing the same.
Yeah, I think so. We've got to go in confident. And listen, all the talk has been from Arnie at least. We're going to win a medal. We expect to win. Now, where the expect to win philosophy maybe seemed to go missing was in that 60th minute when we saw him play definitely more defensive, try and hold on for that draw, which, listen, with the quality of Spain was no shame. But yeah, it's important, I think, that we play on the front foot and get the win, because also we'll set up our next opponent, which I believe is the winner of, is it the Brazil, Germany, Ivory Coast group?
Yes.
Yes.
Group C versus Group D, I'm fairly certain.
Okay, so obviously we want to avoid Brazil, but Ivory Coast look a very strong team as well, and that'll be a very tough test. Germany, I'm hoping we get Germany, because Germany are awful. You look at this Germany team. This is not a strong Germany team at all. It sounds like they just went to Bundesliga relegation battles and just said, listen, if anyone wants a free trip to Japan, granted there is COVID, but you can go as long as you're basically a Bundesliga level player. They're not a great team. So I hope we get Germany in the next round, but obviously maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. We're not even in the next round yet.
Not through yet. And expect to win. I mean, that's more of a big picture philosophy, I think. You don't win medals in group games against Spain, Nick. It's all about the podium.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. At a certain point, I guess, yeah, I don't know. The expect to win thing, it seemed really good against Argentina, and maybe we shouldn't have been, maybe that's right. Maybe you shouldn't be so intimidated by the players. But I don't know how. I don't think, for example, the Golden Generation was really ever intimidated straight out of the gate. I don't think Ange's, Socceroos were intimidated straight out of the gate as well. So I don't think that's a trait that Australians and Socceroos have lacked historically. I think we've always been willing to take it to nations, and we've always kind of believed in ourselves more than definitely people from overseas have. But, whatever helps the group helps the group. And if this does, then good luck to them. Use it.
The big debate we were having on the watch along was Arzani versus Tilio, or can you have both? Is there a temptation tonight to unleash the Tilio-Arzani axis when they've only replaced each other so far?
Yeah, I mean, for me, absolutely. I think they couldn't combine fantastically. They're both intelligent players. They're both, quick, skillful players. I think Tilio is more direct. He tends to just get the ball, pass it forward, go, really good movement. Arzani is technically the best player we have. He's the most likely player to conjure up something, to go past the player, to drag three defenders out of position, just because he's so good on the ball. I think his passing is really good. People say his decision-making is not good. No, I think what's happening is he's taking the most risks. He's the one always trying to make that pass, and someone has to do that. And he's our creative, output. So when they say his decision making not good, no, he loses the ball more than most players. Yes, but he is also creating the most chances. So, and we saw that against Spain. He was the best chance we had at scoring, and I think we saw that also against Argentina as well when he played through McGree and Wales stuffed up what would have been an easy, stealing goal.
All right. Down to brass tacks now, Nick. Before we move on, I'm going to go through this Oli Roos 11. We're going to pick our teams, all right?
Yeah.
We'll do it together.
All right, let's do it.
In goals, no change. Glover's been fine.
Yep. We'll go with Glover.
Happy? Right back. This is the big decision. I'm going Tommy Deng.
I'm agreeing with you with Tommy Deng. I think that's what we're going to go, especially because you pointed out how good that Egyptian player is, whose name I've forgotten.
Ramadan Sobhi.
Ramadan Sobhi. Respect.
So the centre-back combination, obviously Sutar, and you imagine Kai Rolls comes in, given he had a substitute's role to play against Egypt.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. I think it's going to be that. Yeah.
Left back Joel King, no change.
Yeah.
He's been outstanding. Yeah. Midfield, the base of the midfield, I think it'll stay as, barring kind of rotations due to fatigue, I'd say it will stay as Metcalf and John Rowe.
Yep, and I think that's the right call. Well, man, we don't know. We're not in the camp. But, I think that'd be the right call.
Oh, you've obviously got Devlin or Bacchus to draw upon as well if there's players too tired or injured or what have you. The front four, I'm calling it. I'm going to go with Arzani, Tilio, Piraeus, and... Oh, I forgot about Watts. Now I'm not sure. I was going to go Piraeus and Wales. I'm not sure if you need both Piraeus and Wales in the team because they're both kind of quite similar.
I honestly,
unfortunately for Western United, that comment, but
I would drop Wales. I would drop Wales. Yeah.
Even after his goal-scoring heroics against Argentina, he wasn't actually that good in that game.
No. I mean, that's the thing. I think he just got on the end of a chance, which I can't remember who missed it. But you know who else I would like to see, and I feel like we haven't seen enough of? And he hasn't even been making the bench. Piscopo. Yeah. What's going on with Piscopo?
I don't know.
Just not even on the bench. I don't know. He's such a talent to me. And, maybe in a way he's too similar to Arzani, because he's like that type of player, comes inside, really technically gifted. But I wouldn't mind seeing Piscopo start tonight. I don't know, maybe he's not in form, maybe there's an injury issue. Obviously one of the issues of not having too many journalists covering the camp there, but he's in the squad. So I would like to see Renato Piscopo deployed.
I'd like to see him off the bench. I'm going Tilio, Arzani, Watts in some sort of combination behind Piraeus as the striker.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Call Arnie, get him on the phone, so we've made the lineup. If he wants us to do the chat, we can just play the Any Given Sunday YouTube clip, and then we just go. That's like an inch by inch,
Done. Yeah. Before we go to a break and talk some women's football, Nick, there have been some quite interesting moves since we were last properly on air in the A-League. Terry Antonis to Western Sydney Wanderers, probably chief among them. Now, Ugarkovic and Antonis in the same midfield. Surely the Wanderers see some improvement in that area this season with the personnel that they've got.
Yeah, I mean, listen, not the biggest vote of confidence to Bacchus. It feels like he's been just trying to replace him the whole time.
I think he might be sold. There was chat about a transfer to Denmark that didn't end up happening. The Wanderers were holding out for a bigger fee, I believe. This is sort of half-remembered transfer rumours from about 6 months to a year ago. Yeah. But I suspect this transfer hinges on the fact that Bacchus might be getting himself a move to Europe.
Okay, fair enough. Well, Antonis is obviously a good get. He's obviously a high-quality player for the A-League. I don't know, I know he didn't have the greatest of spells in Korea. I don't know how that's affected him, but you would say on paper, that's a great, duo to be in the midfield there. But I'm still, I'm very skeptical on the Wanderers. I mean, they were just so poor. They've been so poor for so long. I feel like Robinson, there's huge pressure on him to deliver this season because, he's really been given kind of all the options. And, I just want to say, because this is a live broadcast, we're going to bring you live goal updates. South Korea 1, Honduras 0. South Korea, of course, if they win, their players if they get a medal at this Olympics, their players don't have to do military service. How's that for a review up? Never mind expect to win, done. Expect to avoid military service. So it was a penalty in the 12th minute. So Honduras 1-0 down. How does that affect the table? South Korea are top. New Zealand are in second. Romania third. Honduras fourth. Could be cool to see New Zealand get through to the next round.
Well, you talk about the pressure of representing your country. What about the pressure of avoiding the draft? That's
absolutely.
Next level. I remember they brought Son Heung-min to the East Asia Games one year because they needed him to win something for Korea so he could avoid national service. So that sort of slightly rinky-dink tournament where we had those all A-League Socceroos lineups a few years ago, they brought Heung-min Son just so they could tick it off, tick the box.
to avoid military service, I would bring Messi, Maradona, Pelé, De Stefano, whoever we needed to.
Absolutely. I admire their being sticklers to the rules as well. I think if in, Argentina or someone's case, they'd probably just, grease a few palms and avoid that kind of situation. And we've got comments coming through in the Twitch. Apparently Piscopo's had some calf soreness. It was mentioned during the Argentina game, which I think I was probably too loud to hear the commentary. And we've got Tom saying, come on, Kiwis. Well, hopefully they can do slightly better than their group stage exit in the women's. But it is a talented Kiwi group. And what a goal from Libby Kakachi the other day, by the way. No, that's old news, but my goodness.
Incredible. Well, actually, just looking at the New Zealand lineup, I was surprised to see Joey C, Brisbane Roar fame.
Yep.
He is in the lineup for New Zealand. I didn't even realise that. So, great to see him involved. Of course, Chris Wood, Kakachi, Yanni Stensis. So, there's quality team there. So I do hope they get through. But we'll update you if they score any goals, thanks to LiveScore. That is not a paid plug, by the way, just a good app, which I like.
All right, with that, we will take a short break. Nick's staying with us, but on the other side, we've got some women's football expertise. We've got Sam Lewis and Marissa Lordanic joining the program to talk about the Matildas campaign, their board draw with the USA, and what is waiting for them when they face Team GB in the next round. The first time Australia has ever played against Great Britain or any of its member nations at a major tournament. So get excited for that.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website, dkpco.com.au, or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Buying your electricity from the big energy companies is now the most expensive way to power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years. But not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
Ronaldinho gathers speed past Ramos. Alguera comes to meet him. He goes past Alguera. Ronaldinho at his very best. Unstoppable.
You're listening to FNR, Football Nation Radio.
Here with Nick Stoll on a Wednesday evening, gearing up for a big night of Olympics action. We've talked about the men. It's time to talk about the women, and we've got from the Far Post podcast, Marissa Lordanic and Sam Lewis. Good evening to you both. Thank you for joining us.
G'day, thanks for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. What did you make of that game against the USA? I'll start with you, Sam. I don't think many of the non-football watching neutrals were particularly excited by it, but, it got the job done.
It did, no, exactly. And that was what they needed. Neither of the teams came into that game needing a win or necessarily even a point. They needed to get through that game without any major injuries. They needed to get through it with some important player rotations in order to keep keep their squad fresh, they're going to matter, which is the core. Yeah, I mean, it was boring, but sometimes football is boring, and that's just, I think when I sit down and think about the Matildas and how they've progressed over the course of this tournament, I'm actually quite impressed because they have shown different ways of adapting to different kinds of teams. And I think over the years, the Matildas have sort of developed a bit of a one-dimensional identity. There's a particular style, a particular way that we associate them with playing. But I think what Tony Gustafsson is starting to get them to do is to really add different kinds of dimensions to that identity now, and shifting and shaping that identity based on the kinds of opposition and the kinds of circumstances they find themselves in. So this is, to me, even though it was a very boring performance, as my timeline repeatedly reminded me with several Simpsons gifs from that one single episode of the two teams just passing it around each other without doing anything. I mean, I think that was, it showed a mature Matildas team. It showed a team that knew that they were coming up against literally the best team in the world, the current Women's World Cup reigning champions, and were able to keep them scoreless. We're able to dominate them in possession. We're able to dominate them in almost every statistical category, and was able to get through to the quarterfinal relatively unscathed, with a bit of a question mark perhaps over Caitlin Ford, who had to withdraw right at the last minute. But having Mary Fowler come in and make her first competitive starting debut, I think was fabulous to see, and she slipped right in there as if it was planned all along. So ultimately, yeah, I'm really impressed by the Matildas' performance against the USA, and I think other people should be as well. But just because they weren't entertained doesn't mean it was a bad performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes you've got to have a little bit of a sympathy for the watching public. I mean, Sam's put a really positive spin on that. Marissa, do you have a different opinion, or were you similarly pleased with the professional approach to getting the point we needed?
I think the performance from the Matildas was important, and I think we forget that we don't beat the USA. We don't really get results against the USA. So getting a draw does feel like a victory, and especially when you look back at how the Matildas started 2021, we were copying 5 against Germany and the Netherlands, and now we've taken it to 0-0 with, as Sam said, the reigning World Cup champions. So it's definitely, I think, a positive from our end. The thing for me, though, was just I didn't expect that performance from the US. I didn't think they would be the kind of team that would sit back against anyone, really, let alone Australia. The fact that they thought they needed to kind of sit back against us and defend against all our attacking threats really bamboozled me, honestly. But we'll take it. I'll take it as a sign of respect for Australia and what Tony's doing with these Matildas. But it was a very bizarre performance, and I do have to agree with you there, Josh. I do feel for some people who were probably sitting there like, what are they doing? I'm not sure this is football.
I think it's also important to keep in mind, though, that the Matildas have played a lot of football in the last week, the last 10 days. This is their third game in 10 days, and they're in the heat and humidity of Japan. They're exhausted by now, considering how disrupted their lead up has been. Tony Gustafsson said that one of the purposes of having all of those really hard friendlies over the last couple of months was to get the players in camp and to really work them, to try and get their fitness up to an international level where they'd be able to compete at an Olympic tournament coming off the back of 400 days of not being together. And one of the things that a lot of the players have said in almost every single interview that you've asked them is that they have trained really, really hard. They want to be the fittest team at this tournament, but these sort of climate conditions are going to take their toll on any team, regardless of how fit you are. And I think given the performances that the Matildas had against New Zealand and Sweden coming into this US game, I'm honestly not surprised that they looked a little bit lethargic, neither from the US perspective either. Like, they had some pretty difficult games against Sweden there, some difficult moments, and then they put 6 past New Zealand as well. So both of those sides are now getting to the point where fatigue is something that they're going to have to start managing. And that could be the tipping point for some of these sides who are perhaps not as prepared as others.
Is this a vintage US team, though? I mean, we all have this image of the USA as the grandmasters of international women's football. They always dominate. They always win. it doesn't strike me as particularly strong team this time around, given the manner of which they lost to Sweden, given the age of the players involved. It seems as if this US side is a little bit past their peak.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that, I think, with the US, but I think there is definitely something to be said for the fact that this is kind of their second golden generation, and they're reaching a point in their age cycles now where this and the next Women's World Cup is probably going to be it for this crop of players. Majority of them were at the 2015 World Cup, which they won. They were all at the 2019 World Cup, which they won, and they'll probably give 2023 one last crack. But the US is sort of having a similar issue to Australia in the sense that they don't have a huge amount of youth coming through their national team system at the moment. And we can see that with the average age range of the US being in the sort of mid to late 30s for the Olympics. And I mean, to be honest, that I'm like, give someone else a turn, you know? Like the US have been so good for such a long time. They were the team of the late 90s, and they've been the team of the 2010s. And I think that the rise of Europe and the emergence of teams like a Sweden, like a Netherlands, even perhaps a France or an Italy or a Great Britain or an England, I guess, really giving it to the US, I think that shift is important for the growth of the women's game. I think that needing to find different champions and create different kinds of rivalries and different fan groups as well is really important for the next stage of women's football.
Stoll, you want to jump in?
Well, I'd just say that, I think the US women's team is historically like the Real Madrid men's team. They wear white, historically very strong, and it's hilarious when they lose. So, I think going forward, I've enjoyed seeing the US struggle in this tournament. And I agree. I think the teams in Europe are overtaken. Sweden, I was very impressed with. Sweden were playing some beautiful football. Obviously, the only team in the competition on 9 points. So I was just going to ask Sam and Marissa, do you think they're now the favourites? And how does that contextualise, I guess, our performance against them? Because I think, maybe coming off the win against New Zealand, some of us were frustrated with the fact that Sweden looked quite superior to us. So just how strong are Sweden, do you think, in this tournament?
I think Sweden were always a medal chance heading into the tournament. As we know, they are a strong side. They've done well at the 2019 World Cup. They did well at the Olympics in Rio. I think beating the US, though, has really raised their stocks, though, because they're the benchmark. If you beat them, then you've got to be doing something right there. I'm interested because I suppose then the other real standout team from this tournament has been the Netherlands, but their results and their whole group was just cocoa bananas. So it's kind of hard to, I suppose, understand how good the Netherlands are when it's like, how do you actually dissect and digest a 10-3 win over Zambia? It's the most insane kind of result.
Can I just say, I love the idea there's a group of death and there's now a group of cocoa bananas. That's my new favourite way to frame groups.
But like every time you tuned into a Group F game, it was like, what, kind of fresh insanity is going to be delivered this evening.
There was the Zambian woman who I think scored hat-tricks in 2 consecutive games, only to see a team get absolutely pumped. Like, what a story at the Olympics. Yep, scored 2 hat-tricks. We were terrible though.
Only 21 years old as well, so definitely one to look out for, Barbara Banda. But so it's really interesting because I suppose on the 2 sides of the bracket, you've got Sweden and you've got the Netherlands, and they've had very different kind of run-ins to the knockout stages. So we can say that Sweden look really good, but they were able to kind of get an easy win over New Zealand. They cruised eventually against us and were dominant against the US. So it's like, how do you kind of compare that with the absolute insanity of what the Netherlands was able to do? Sam, do you have some takes on that?
Yeah, I sort of had a feeling that Sweden would do really well at this tournament. I looked at their results in the sort of 18 months in the lead up to it, and I was like, okay, they are probably a chance at a medal here. And it was honestly that defeat over the US that I was like, okay, this is the top dog. I feel like perhaps the way that the brackets have fallen is really exciting in terms of perhaps a Sweden-Netherlands final or maybe a Sweden-US final. But given the US are playing the Netherlands in the quarterfinal, I mean, that is going to be an absolute fire game, a replay of the 2019 Women's World Cup final, which the US won, but the Netherlands have just been going from strength to strength. Like Marissa was saying, their tournament so far has been absolutely extraordinary. They've scored 21 goals in 3 games, but they also have a little bit of a leaky defence as well. Again, conceding 3 goals to Zambia is not something that a powerhouse European team tends to do. And also conceding 2 goals against China and 3 against Brazil. So it's just going to be an absolute chaos game. I'm so excited for it. And maybe this is just the universe being like, all right, we're going to have some real boring games so that we can pack absolutely all of the drama into 90 minutes across the rest of the tournament so that neutral fans can get some sort of balance over the course of the rest of the Olympics. So yeah, I'm really excited. I think Sweden have been so impressive and they deserve a gold medal, to be honest. Like, they have medalled in every single tournament they've participated in. They finished 3rd at the Women's World Cup in France a few years ago after defeating England, but they've never won gold. They've never won the top gong. And I think this is the team, this is the generation, this is the moment for them to do it.
I like that idea that it's no in between. It's either tumbleweeds or cocoa bananas. Oh, love it. I want to talk about the tactics. I mean, I've been whining about this on Twitter a little bit, but I don't like the 3-4-3 that Tony Gustafsson is playing. It leaves Ellie Carpenter kind of stifled and not able to get forward as she usually does. And we seem a little bit outmatched in terms of trying to control the centre of midfield in games. Marissa, do you have any ideas or thoughts about why this tactical change has taken place, and what are your opinions on it?
See, I actually really love the kind of fluidity of the 3 in defence, 5 going forward. I do agree with you. I think in an ideal world, we would have Steph Catley as a left wing back and Ellie Carpenter as a right wing back, so that it would just be bombing down both sides. Defences wouldn't know what to do with us. But that's obviously in an ideal world. The thing that really bothers me at the moment, and it's kind of out of our control, is what you kind of said with controlling the centre of the park and the midfield. We didn't have a lot of midfielders coming into this tournament. We were using Ivy Lewick as a centre back, so that was already kind of another midfielder down. Because of injuries, because of kind of the timing of those, we haven't been able to use players like Elise Callan-Knight, who we all know is an excellent central defensive midfielder. So we've kind of lost her. We've lost Lewick to the centre of defence. Instead, we're using Emily Van Egmond, so then we've lost her as the kind of creative force up forward. So it's all these kind of domino effects that have really affected the midfield, but we know why they've happened. So it's kind of a grit your teeth now, hope that everyone comes good, and eventually, once we get the players that should be playing in those positions, the 3-4-3 can actually really flourish. So the fact that it's worked thus far, we've gotten out of the group stage, with, I think we can't undersell the achievement of that considering everything that's happened in the last 18 months. I think it is working, and I think we all know what needs to happen for it to work even better. It's just a case of getting those players in the right positions, getting people fit, getting people back, and being able to actually use the players to their full advantage in this lineup that is set to kind of bring out the best in all of them, really.
Yeah, I'll just to bounce off Marissa there. I think the fitness of some players is definitely an issue. I have come to kind of like the back 3 because, as Marissa mentioned, it's not so much a back 3 so much as a fluid sort of back 3 to back 5. Sometimes it's a back 4. And I think the Sweden game was maybe the best example of how it could work, because in particular kinds of moments, you saw both Ellie Carpenter and Steph Catley bomb forward and do the thing that they are so good at doing, the thing that they have become so known for. And they became some of the most exciting attacking players of that game. But they didn't do it all the time, which they tend to do previously in a lot of games, particularly against lower ranked opponents. They did that all the time. But now with this back 3, I think it's giving both Catley and Carpenter, who are also 2 of our best defenders, a little bit more defensive responsibility. And I think when we talk about the Matildas, particularly in the context of those 5 friendlies in the lead up to Tokyo, there were so many questions about defence. And typically, traditionally, the Matildas' defence has not been particularly strong. And so I think Tony is starting to try and find a balance, trying to find ways to compensate for the fact that when it comes to centre-backs in particular, natural centre-backs like Alana Kennedy, Claire Polkinghorne, Laura Brock, there is not a whole lot of speed there. There's a lot of height, yes, a lot of experience, yes, but there's not a lot of speed. And in the modern game, you do need to have quick centre-backs in order to cater for counter-attacking, in order to cater for a whole bunch of different things. So by bringing players like Catley and Carpenter back into more of a central defensive role, it ensures that we do have a little bit more speed when necessary, but by making the back three fluid, it still gives them both opportunities to go forward. We didn't see that necessarily against the US because I don't think that was part of the game plan necessarily, but we did see it a number of times against Sweden, and of course we saw it a lot against New Zealand as well. So I think these players are learning. They're adding a bit more strings to their bow in terms of their defensive responsibilities, and I think the team, I mean, midfield is sort of a different question, but in a defensive respect, I think that we are starting to look a bit more solid and a little bit more mature as a result of that.
Can I just also add to that? I understand what you're saying, Josh, about not seeing Carpenter, bomb forward. But I thought she did really well defensively against Rapinoe last night. And you saw that speed, how important it was when, and even Rapinoe kind of pushed her, and then there was the yellow card, or maybe it was for kicking the ball away or something. But you could see that Rapinoe, one of the all-time great players, was so frustrated coming up against, Carpenter, who isn't known for being, the greatest defender ever. So that's actually a really good sign for her just personally, that she's progressing as a player, and maybe Gustafsson is really helping with that. But yeah, for me, the biggest problem is the midfield, and we're all kind of talking about it. It's the biggest frustration watching it last night. Van Egmond, who is a wonderful player, an extremely talented passer, but clearly much more comfortable higher up the pitch, just doesn't seem comfortable in asking for the ball off the centre backs and playing the way through midfield. When Cooney Cross came on later, and I love Cooney Cross. I think she's an absolute unbelievable talent. She's going to go so far. But she didn't look comfortable as well, having to play in quite a deep role and coming deep. Now, again, the match, it has to factor in, were they playing for a 0-0? Okay, let's not commit too many forward. But there was a real lack of movement. And it was, I think that was the reason that we weren't seeing them play through midfield, which I think is the biggest kind of thing that I'm hoping to see in the future from the Matildas and from Gustafsson, is that he can get us playing through midfield, because we know we have that speed out wide. We know we have, obviously, Sam Kerr, the greatest striker in the world, or one of the greatest strikers in the world. Caitlin Ford has her qualities. Kaya Simon, I think, has been really good, coming off a lot of injuries as well. And I actually think maybe even seeing her in a kind of deeper midfield role. Now, I'm not saying play her at 6, but she's been kind of coming into those deep spaces. She obviously played the pass to Kerr for the goal. So that's kind of been interesting as well. But I think the midfield is the key. If Gustafsson does that, then I think we'll see a lot of progress and we'll see the results come from that.
We're talking about the age of the defenders in the team, the real defenders, natural ones like Polkinghorne and Kennedy and Brock being maybe a slight issue, and Carpenter playing in there for a bit of recovery pace has certainly helped with the defence. But is it then, in retrospect, a little bit of a mistake not taking someone like Jenna McCormick, who, for all the faults in her game, is an unbelievable athlete and can just chase people down on the defensive end? I feel as if these flow-on effects in midfield could have been avoided if we had a defender there who could recover in behind and sort of cover for the older, slower players in the back line. And then you could push, say, an Ivy Lewick or someone more comfortable as a natural 6 into midfield.
I mean, I feel like Jenna McCormick, she's absolutely a fabulous athlete, and we saw how impressive she was when playing in the W League. But I think she is also still quite slow, and so I mean, the problem really is. The last time I
watched her was in the NPL, so maybe that was why she looked really quick.
I mean, she's extremely physical. She's fantastic in the air. She's a really strong one-on-one player, but given the very dynamic way in which Tony wants this team to play, and the sort of risk that we sometimes open ourselves up to in terms of counterattacks, which we saw against the US and we also saw in bursts against Sweden, we do really need to have some speed back there. And we saw, particularly against Sweden, Ivy Lewick, she's not the quickest player either. She's a midfield machine, but she doesn't have a huge burst of pace on her, and she got absolutely cleaned up by Sophia Jakobsen a number of times down the right wing. And Alex Morgan taking off through a couple of counters within the US game as well. So I don't think Jen McCormick was the answer. I think it's a more holistic kind of system answer, and trying to use players in the kinds of positions that compensate for the weaknesses of others around them. So I think that's sort of the primary rationale behind bringing Carpenter and Catley a little bit further in particular moments, in particular games. But the big question, I think, is moving forward, what are the kinds of centre-backs that Australia is producing from the next generation? Who's the next big centre-back star? Because Lana Kennedy is the youngest of those more dedicated, more natural centre-backs at the moment, and she's only in her mid-20s. So you'd expect her to stay on for quite a while. But Polkinghorne, she's in her 30s now. Laura Brock, she's getting on. I think she's said a number of times this is going to be her last Olympics. So who are going to be the next centre-backs that Kennedy is going to be paired with? And what are the kinds of qualities that they can bring to this Matildas side? That's the sort of the big question for me.
Fair enough too. Well, we're preparing to face Team GB, the first time that Australia has ever been drawn against one of the home nations in a major tournament. What are you expecting from the Brits, Marissa?
Yeah, I was, looking into how they had been going in the tournament, and basically the consensus was they've gotten the job done, but they have not been exciting. So as, full nuffy Australian fan hat on, that excites me, because if they're only kind of doing the bare minimum, I think we can do a bit better than the bare minimum against them. But again, it's a team that is able to draw on, the very best talent of England, Scotland and Wales. I don't think there's any Northern Irish girls in there, but they've got absolute superstars across the park. Their midfield in particular, we were talking about it on the podcast today, their midfield is just absolutely stacked with talent, the likes of Kim Little that we were able to enjoy down here in the W League when she was playing for Melbourne City, the likes of Caroline Weir, who's just got an absolute rocket of a foot, really dangerous kind of with long range efforts and stuff. So their midfield is quite stacked. That would be kind of the big area of concern when it comes to the Brits. But if they haven't really kicked into gear just yet, then I don't mind our chances, because I think we have that spark that could, it might burn the whole house down, but it also might start a really nice fire.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned this when we were speaking earlier today, Marissa, as well, that the familiarity that a lot of the Matildas have with this Great Britain side at club level may actually come in handy here. Sam Kerr plays with Millie Bright at Chelsea. They've played against a lot of the women in midfield for Manchester City. The vast majority of this Matilda side have played in England with or against a lot of this Great Britain team for the last year, even sometimes the last 18 months to 2 years. So I think that familiarity with the opposition players could really help, in the same way that I think Tony Gustafson's familiarity with the US women's national team really helped in getting us that 0-0 draw against them. I am still scared of Great Britain because they have some of the most extraordinary players in the world, including Lucy Bronze, who, is far and away the best right back. And we saw when the going gets tough, particularly that game in the Women's World Cup where Lucy Bronze basically pulled England onto her back and dragged them through to the semi-final. That was an extraordinary single performance from her, and she's capable of doing that sort of thing when they need a result. So they have those game-changing kinds of players. And at the moment, it's just a matter of seeing whether or not this team can really click, because on paper, they are absolutely incredible, but they haven't quite been able to show it. But they've also been quite solid defensively as well. I think they've only conceded one goal over the course of the whole tournament so far. So I'd be really curious to see if, again, that familiarity of Sam Kerr against Millie Bright or a Kate Ford against Leah Williamson is going to come in handy with us, because they know how these defenders defend and they also know their weak spot.
Well, 10 players from Manchester City in this Team GB squad. 5 from Chelsea and 4 from Arsenal. And Nick, we've seen a lot of great international teams built on kind of solid cores from certain club sides who are already familiar with each other. So that's, I mean, a terrifying prospect on paper.
Yeah, but, like Sam and Marissa have said, I think we can be confident, maybe not like super confident, but I think it can be, there's a great opportunity for the Matildas there. And had you asked me pre-tournament what I thought we did, I kind of thought quarterfinals is where we would exit. So for us to go, obviously with our issues, that we've had with injuries and with our performances in Europe that we had, where we had some heavy losses, kind of felt like quarterfinals is where it was going to be. So if we can get to the semi-finals, I think that's a great achievement. Obviously that puts you 3 out of the 4 semi-finals win medals, so that would be really great for the Matildas. I guess the question that I wanted to ask Sam and Marissa is, are you seeing an improvement under Gustafsson from Ante Milicic and then obviously before him, Alan Stajic?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's important to keep context in mind when comparing, I guess, a team under 2 different coaches. Ante, when he took over the Matildas ahead of the Women's World Cup, he had very little time with them. And given that international football already is really difficult in terms of laying down foundations, new systems, new styles, new tactics with a group of players that you don't really see that often anyway, having to do it with such a limited amount of time heading into a major tournament was a huge stress for everybody involved. And, all the big drama around the sacking of Alan Stajic as well it didn't help that sort of mental pressure, that emotional pressure. So I think it's difficult to sort of use that and to compare it to what we're seeing with Tony. The circumstances are wildly different, even though, the idea of 2 coaches not having a huge amount of time with their players is quite similar. I think the fact that Ante was just an interim coach, he was hired just to get the Matildas through a bit of a rocky phase up until we did hire Tony, perhaps played into a couple of different decisions that Ante may have made with the Matildas. But again, outside of that as well, when Ante took the Matildas through Olympic qualifying, there wasn't a huge amount of pressure there either, just based on the fact that the vast majority of the opponents we faced in that qualifying tournament were pretty easy to defeat. Like, you didn't really need to play a sort of a defensive system like we did against the US or whatever against Vietnam. The only challenge we really faced in that moment was China, and we got a 1-1 draw, and I think that sort of perhaps showed the limitations of the Matildas in some respects. So comparing that maybe with what we're seeing at the moment under Tony, I do think the Matildas have progressed, and it looks like from the system changes that he's implemented that they're definitely taking it all in their stride. They're obviously learning a lot, and they're becoming a lot more confident with being able to do different things in different scenarios. So in that respect, I think they're definitely getting better.
If I may remix your question, I do think that the Matildas have improved greatly from the first game under Tony to this game. I think we all saw how bad things were in April. Like, there's no way to sugarcoat that. Even with the context, with everything, it wasn't good. Things have improved. Things have started to be embedded. And I think the entire kind of group stage performances, although the results were kind of patchy and all over the place and we kind of got one of everything, we definitely played a lot better than we did against the Netherlands. We played a hell of a lot better than we did against Germany. So I think in terms of this kind of first real 6 months of Tony's tenure, we definitely have improved. And I think there's also a lot of signs that we can see the continued kind of progression of where the team is going to go and stuff. So I think that's really positive and something that we can kind of take to heart.
Well, I think with that, we better wrap it up. Thank you to both of you for making the time to appear on the show and chat a bit of Matildas. If people are interested in a deeper dive, we've done some terrific segments on your podcast with experts from overseas as well. I really enjoyed the Stephanie Yang episode, I believe her name is, from The Athletic. Gave a great summation of where the Team USA is at. So make sure you check out the Far Post podcast on ESPN. For more. And Nick, I will see you in a couple of hours for our Ollie Roos watch along. Can't wait for that.
Yes, that is going to be super exciting. And just to give the listeners an update, a bit of live score. Ui Jo Huang has scored his second goal of the game to put South Korea 2-0 up against Honduras, and then Honduras got a red card. So South Korea closer and closer to avoiding military service, which now is my favourite thing to follow at the Olympics.
All right. Well, fingers crossed for those South Koreans. Nick, I'll see you soon. Sam and Marissa, thank you so much.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks a lot, guys.
You can tune in tomorrow for more FNR. We've got our watch along tonight. You know where to get us. It's been a pleasure. We'll speak to you again soon.